everyone. Welcome to another episode of Roast into Ceilings. Today is
Today is
election
election
day.
day.
Oh my
So
gosh, 2024 election.
this is a big deal. You might be wondering, Maggie and Isabella, why are you guys talking about this? You guys are Canadian. You cannot vote either. But I think it's important for us to talk about how whatever the outcomes are today are going to affect women's rights everywhere. America, some of you guys might realize they are pretty influential, so whatever they do will affect us, will affect everyone. So we're going to take the time today to kind of talk about what would happen if either side won and what that would mean for women specifically. So just going to cover some of their policies. We've tried to remain as unbiased as possible, even though we are very pro-women, and you can maybe see where that leans. So to start us off, I will talk about Kamala Harris's policies and stances on sex crimes. So, Kamala Harris started her legal career prosecuting child abusers and sex traffickers before she became the district attorney. So, she has always been passionate about stopping these sex crimes, stopping these traffickers, helping these victims, helping these women. And when she was doing her speech, saying oh yeah, I'm the next nominee, she talked about how Trump was convicted of sexual assault. And I just think while this might not be a specific bill she's trying to pass, it is important to have a candidate who is passionate about sex crimes and stopping them, to have a candidate who recognizes victims of sex trafficking, recognizes victims of sexual assault, having a candidate that takes it seriously. So I think that's something we should keep in mind going into the election.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point to make. My first one is education funding. So Trump has recently proposed the elimination of the Department of Education. This is per CBS that he announced this. And basically, the impact would be on existing federal funding programs that benefit marginalized students, women, low income, children with disabilities, and so on. And the program currently is worth over $30 billion. So he didn't state how much he's planning to cut, but he does hope to cut this fund significantly. And it is definitely these social services are definitely a giant part in evening the field and closing the opportunity gap. And we're definitely going to see a shift in the demographic if this goes through.
Definitely. We talk a lot on this podcast. We actually try to center our podcast around the fact that when women are given opportunities, they can do amazing things. That's what we love to talk about. So the whole idea of cutting funding, which seems very counterintuitive to me. Yeah, Isabel, that was a great point, that this is going to affect all women everywhere across the United States, because education is such a big part of feminism. And speaking of some monetary policies, the second thing I want to talk about that Kamala Harris has kind of brought up in her campaign is Childcare Reform. So even while she has been the vice president, she's always been kind of passionate about limiting the cost of childcare. Here's a quote she said per CNN. "My plan is that no working family should have to pay more than 7% of their household income to childcare." And just for comparison, that currently it's kind of equivalent that 10% of married couples spend 10% of their income on children, and single parents will spend 32% of their income on children. So limiting that to 7% is going to, first of all, just help families be able to move through life easier and make sure they all have the support and all have the education, all have the resources. And also, again, support women and their careers. If they are able to afford childcare services, they are not going to have to give up their whole careers, going to have to give up their whole jobs to stay home and take care of those kids. So this childcare reform policy will be furthering feminism like that too.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I like hearing about what she's going to do going forwards regarding that. I don't think I've seen too many policies about it, so yeah, that's super interesting. My next one is it's quite controversial, not only in America, but also it's a very big discussion in Canada right now, which is a restriction on transgender rights and transgender education. And it's definitely a two-sided coin. The proposed policies enforce strict biological distinctions in the schooling system, and it also ensures that minors are not allowed to make biologically altering decisions while they're still under 18. Um, he's also planning to sign a legislation recognizing only two genders assigned at birth once he is into office. Um, and blocking federal funding to schools that promote gender transition or allow gender-affirming healthcare. Uh, so a lot less gender identity education in general. And a little bit away from schools, but a military ban on trans people in the army as well. And it aligns with recent state level actions because right now states, even without Trump in power, are already trying to take actions to restrict gender affirming care.
The whole recognizing two genders at birth thing is just insane to me. Because I feel like in every biology class since like middle school, we've talked about the existence of intersex people and how chromosomes are different. See, I don't know. He's going on this whole tangent, but I think talking about these rights are important because again, trans women are going to be a huge part of feminism in any way. So talking about this is an important part. I know like there are sides of feminism that do exclude trans women, but again, it is always going to be important to note that women are going to be included in feminism conversations everywhere, all the time. So now we're going to move into another topic, which I feel like is the obvious one here, but where each candidate stands on reproductive rights. So Kamala Harris, one of her major parts of her campaign is protecting reproductive rights. So she's vowed to restore reproductive freedoms. And she's been endorsed by organizations that do work towards this, like Planned Parenthood. This is super cool. I heard about it, that she does have Planned Parenthood's endorsement, and she's promised that if Senate were to pass a bill that was going to restore the protections we had under Roe v. Wade that legalized abortions and kept those protections, she would sign off of it, and she would veto any nationwide abortion ban if she was in office. And we know, again, abortion is a controversial topic. Again, it is important to note, and she's pushed this too, that abortion bans do not just affect abortions, right? Abortion bans are going to affect women getting prenatal care, IVFs, the number of doctors who are just going into the OBGYN field in general, which again is healthcare, and so according to Vanity Fair. And the Supreme Court in June too sided with the Biden-Harris administration, where they aimed to make it more difficult they prevented a bill to make it more difficult to access abortion medication, because the statement from, again, Harris's office said that our administration will not waver in our dedication to preserving access to essential medication. So her stance on this is pretty clear, that she is passionate about protecting women's rights and protecting women's reproductive rights and making sure these freedoms are going to be upheld in America. And I'm glad that this isn't something she's very like wishy-washy on. I think her stance is pretty clear, and I just think it's important to have like one of the big two party candidates speaking on it.
Yeah, 100%. Harris and Trump are quite clear on their policies when it comes to reproductive care.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely don't dance around the topic. I think everybody knows globally that Trump overturned Roe v. Wade. I think, yeah, definitely abortion is probably the most globally known topic right now for the US. So he plans to limit abortion access, encouraging states to pass further restrictive laws. Right now, over 60% of abortions in the US are medication-based. So if you don't know, this means pills. And Trump stands on using the Comstock Act, which is a law that restricts mailing obscene materials. Basically, it means block the mailing of abortion pills and beyond abortion through surgery. It can definitely reduce access to medication abortions. States already have limited clinic access, and for those states, it's definitely going to have a very big impact.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Now, after just speaking about all these policies from both candidates, we just want to mention again that while some people might think like, oh, I'm not super interested in politics, they don't really affect me, I don't keep up with them. We just want to say that they are going to affect you, especially if you are a woman and you are passionate about feminism. Politics do affect you and will continue to affect you. So we think it's important to stay up to date on what major political leaders are speaking about these issues with. So we hope that this episode did help you just learn a little bit more about what could possibly happen after this election.
100%. We are so lucky as Canadians or as Americans to have a say in what goes on in our city, in our province, in our country. And it's important that we exercise that right and educate ourselves because, as you said, every action that the government does influences us. So go talk to your local government if you can. Try to find some representatives that are accessible and talk to them and find your values and what aligns with you. So thank you so much.
For sure.